All right, so here we are at the St. Louis Downtown Airport. We're currently on runway 30 left, 30 left, and we are going to go out to the south practice area. And so usually I would do this while we're holding short of the runway, but we could, when we make the switch to tower frequency, we can load in our park's traffic frequency. And so I'll do that on COM2, I usually do. So we'll put that in 123, whoops, 123 point, I can't even read that. 123.5 is going to be parks traffic, and we'll be monitoring that and transmitting on that when we get down to the practice area for separation. And we'll go ahead and make that active in COM2, and we'll switch over to that when we get there. Perfect. So everything's set over here. Flaps, they always put it in the simulator to 10, but we'll have them up for now. And so we're going to take off. We're going to climb to an initial altitude of 2,500 feet, and we'll head down south. And so the reason we go 2,500 feet is for airspace considerations, really. So if we zoom out here on this display, what you can see in blue, so all these blue boundaries are Bravo airspace. And this particular display on this avionics does not tell you the altitudes, but we know, and we can verify with our VFR charts, that the altitude in this section right here that we're currently underneath, the Bravo airspace, begins at 3,500 feet. And in this one that's kind of in front of us, it begins at 3,000 feet. And so keeping that in mind, we will climb to an initial altitude of 2,500 as we move southbound, so kind of down in this area. So there's a town right here called Columbia, which I'll point out, and once we get past Columbia, that's when we can start to climb. But we'll start out at 2,500 feet is what we'll climb to initially, and then we'll go higher as we get down. So I'll get rid of that ATC dialog box, and we will be ready to go. So one last check before we would take off. We'll make sure that the fuel valve, fuel selectors on both, fuel shutoff valve will be in. Flaps are up, mixture is rich, all the lights are on the way that we want them to be. We'll leave the taxi lights on as well. And so all that stuff is to say lights are good, camera, everything else is good, and then the mixture's good. So lights, camera, action, so we are all set to go. And so our parking brake's currently set on because the simulator always does that, so we'll just release, we'll release that. I think that's released now. And we're good to go. So we'll go ahead and we'll increase our power, holding the brakes, increase our power up to 2,000 RPMs. We'll check all of our engine indications where everything looks green, fuel flow is positive, and we'll release the brakes now. There it goes. And we'll go full throttle. And so we're initially watching the airspeed. We'll fly runway heading for now. So we're watching our airspeed come up. Airspeed's alive, doing our best to stay over the center line. We'll rotate at 55 knots. There's that 55, so we'll rotate, bring it back, and we'll climb out at VY. And so since this is a 172S model, we will climb out at 74 knots. I know in the Rs it's 79, but for this particular plane in the simulator, it's 74. So we'll climb out at 74, we're on runway heading, and we'll just pretty much stay with runway heading for now, until we get to 1,100 feet. There's the tower. Might be going a little bit off to the right. It's tough to tell from here. In the simulator, it's kind of difficult. But so we're coming up on 1,100 feet, and we'll turn to a heading of about 200. And so we'll just make it a nice slight bank. It doesn't have to be anything super acrobatic. We'll just bank over a little bit, and we'll let that airspeed stay at 74 for now, as we're getting turned over to 200, and we'll fly out this way. And so we can set our heading bug over to that current altitude or current heading, just so it's a visual cue for us. It helps us to remember where we are going. So we'll set the heading bug to about 200. And the heading might change depending on what we're doing and where we're going in the practice area, but 200 is usually good. It'll take us close to Columbia, which is what we want. And so right here, we're climbing through about 2,000 feet. Normally we would do our climb checklist, but the simulator, everything goes quick, but the climb checklist is just pretty much throttle's full. We're climbing out at the airspeed that we want to be at, which is, you know, around 80. I'm fine with. A little faster than VY. Can cool the engine a little bit more on hot days. And the flaps are up, mixture's where it needs to be as well. So cool, so we're coming up to 2,500 feet here. We're looking for traffic all the way. And so here's 2,500 feet, so we'll just kind of let the nose come down. I'll reduce the power a little bit as well. Sorry, you can't really see that. We'll reduce the power a little bit here as well, so we don't get going so fast. We'll try to maintain about 2,500 feet going about this direction. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up the autopilot just so the plane will maintain it while I'm talking about other things, because the simulator doesn't always like to play nice with this. So I'll engage the autopilot. And so I'm going to turn it into heading mode. And so now we see HDG there. So the HDG means heading mode on the autopilot. And this is the same autopilot we have in our R models. So it should maintain about 200. And altitude, we'll put it for altitude for 2,500 feet. It might stay at 2,600, but this is fine. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to exit the plane. That's super loud. But the things that we're looking at here, so the town of Columbia that we talked about, the town of Columbia is going to be right here. And we know that that's Columbia because, well, we could always look at it on our VFR charts. But, so this is Highway 3. Sorry about that. This is Highway 255. I'm going to talk to ATC really quick. We'll acknowledge the frequency change. So this here is Highway 255. And so Columbia is just going to be just off of 255. The JB Bridge, which is depicted on VFR charts, is right over here. And so that Highway 255 turns to the right. And so Columbia is right here. And so this is the area that we want to make sure that we are still below, you know, 3,500 feet at while we're in this part, because we can see that our plane currently, and if I zoom us in a little bit, we are still well within this blue boundary area for the Bravo airspace at the 3,500 foot area. And so once we cross Columbia, and Columbia is right here, once we cross Columbia, we can climb higher and not worry about the Bravo airspace because there will be none above us. And so we can see Columbia here. And there's another landmark that we can see with Columbia it's good to be aware of when we're headed out to the practice area, and that is Sackman Field. And so Sackman Field it's now a private airport, but I'll see if I can find it in the plane because it's a little quieter. Yeah, you can see it right here actually. So there's a couple, like 4 rows of hangar buildings, and they're pretty clear to see from the air. So those are the different hangars that planes can be in, and then the runway for Sackman. The runway for Sackman is right here. And so that might be a good spot if we ever had a, you know, engine trouble in this area, we could land there. But like we said, it's a private airport now, so if we wanted to go there, normally we'd have to ask for approval. But it's good to be aware that Sackman is there because planes do operate in that traffic pattern, and we just want to be aware of that. But so there's Sackman. Our Columbia is right, pretty much right. Whoops. Sorry, it's weird controlling the camera here. This is Columbia, this populated area here, and it does look very much like this, you know, in the real life as well. And so, interesting thing here about this area is that we have Columbia over to our left, and we have quite a lot of trees, and it's a little bit hillier. You can kind of tell that there's a bit more contour with the terrain over there. And we have all these trees, and then off of our right side, it's pretty much all agricultural farmland, so it's flat. And so I generally like to do my maneuvers kind of over this flat land because if, you know, in the event that we had engine trouble, we don't do our maneuvers super high in the air, so we won't be able to glide super far. And so I like to be over these areas because there's a lot of decent places for us to put the plane down if we had to. You know, just as a precaution. So now that we're south of Columbia here, we can go ahead and we can start to climb. So I'm going to disconnect the autopilot, and I'll actually fly the plane a bit. So I'm going to press the button here to disconnect it. I think it's on. Yeah, I'll press the red button right here. Click that. It beeps, so the autopilot's no longer active. I'm controlling it going back and forth now. And so what I'm going to do is this lake right here that's in front of us. It's pretty clear to see right here, and it's pretty clear to see in real life as well. that lake is called Valmeyer Lake, or we call it Valmeyer Lake. It's actually called Moordock Lake, but the town of Valmeyer is near it, and everyone calls it Valmeyer Lake. So we're going to head there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to climb up to 4,000 feet, and so I'm going to increase the power to full, and we're going to climb up to 4,000. We'll climb at 80 knots or so. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a call on the park's traffic frequency. And so usually I do this over Columbia, but I'm talking my mouth off here. But usually over Columbia I make the call. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to estimate, well, we're probably about 4 miles south of Columbia. So I'm going to make the call on the frequency. What I'm going to say is, who we are, where we are, and what we're doing. And the other planes in the area hopefully are making the same calls, so we can all talk to each other. We know what everybody's doing, so we can stay away from each other safely. So what I would say is, park's traffic, Cessna Oscar Mike Golf is 4 miles south of Columbia, currently 3,000 feet, climbing up to 4,000 feet, headed towards Valmeyer Lake for maneuvers, parks. And so you start and end the frequency with parks traffic or parks, so everybody knows what you're doing, and then you pretty much just say what you're doing. It's, there's not really anything right or wrong that you can say, but we just want to make sure that everyone's aware of what we're doing, so that we can all choose an appropriate course of action just to be safe at the end of the day. So we'll climb up to 4,000 feet, headed towards this Valmeyer Lake area, and then we'll kind of go through some other areas of the practice area. So very good. And so now we can see I'm not following the heading bug anymore. I'm just headed towards that lake, which I like. It's a very obvious landmark to stay around when we're doing maneuvers. It's really easy to keep yourself there, and it prevents you. I think it's great when it can help us from getting lost as well. The other good thing that we have is we have the Mississippi River off of our right, which pretty much if you follow the river northbound, it'll take you right to the airport, because our airport's pretty much just off the river. And so that's another way that we can always orient ourselves. You do a maneuver and you get spun around and you're kind of like, oh, I don't know which direction is which. You can use the river. You can use your magnetic compass to help. Okay, there's the river. Going north on the river can take us back towards our airport. And we have other resources for that as well. But cool, so there's 4,000 feet. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to set the autopilot because, oops, not yet. It's going to go back to 2,000. I'm going to set the autopilot because I'm really bad at maintaining altitude in the simulator. So I put altitude and there we go. It should just keep us kind of going in this direction for now. And so if you look, we are getting, we're pretty close to Valmeyer Lake. And so what we would do now that we're at 4,000 feet, even on maneuvers flights, I like to pretend like we're doing a cross country at first. I like to pretend that we're going somewhere, and so we get out our cruise checklist and we do our cruise checklist. So yeah, of course I've reduced the power a little bit. And so doing the cruise checklist, I think the first thing on there would be power setting. And so in this particular plane, the S model, anywhere within the green is okay. So between 2,100 and 2,700 RPM is what we want to be. And so we're within that. That's check. And then we want to make sure that we're trimmed for a level flight. And so trim technique's a little bit difficult to demonstrate in the simulator. I'll attempt to. So I'm going to disconnect the autopilot. I'll add a little bit of power, and I'll kind of show you how I like to trim. One of the things about trim that's can be really challenging for people is we start to over control it. And so what that means is like, okay, right now we can see that the plane is, if you look outside, you can kind of see that the nose is angling up. And so when we look down at the instruments, we can see, oh yeah, we're climbing. And so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to push a little bit forward, and I'll make that visible again. So you can see that I'm pushing forward a little bit to try to keep us level. And so the correct way to trim is you hold yourself level by pushing forward on the stick or pulling back on the stick, whatever it is. You make yourself level, and then you rotate the trim wheel so that you don't have to push or pull anymore. And so like right now I'm having to push forward on my stick for the simulator. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to rotate it up just a little bit, and now I let go. And so now the nose is wanting to come down, so obviously I did that too much. And this is really, really hard to do in the simulator. But in the real plane, you can actually feel how much you're having to push forward and how much you're having to pull back, and you can tell when you're using the wheel. But the things we want to avoid doing, and so this is wrong what I'm about to show, would be this. So I see, oh, we're climbing, so I'm going to trim us forward. Oh, now we're going down, so I'm going to trim us back. Stuff like that we want to avoid doing, because then we just start controlling the plane with the trim, and that's not what we want to do. So we really want to avoid doing that. And so I'll set the altitude again for 4,000 feet. Yep. So trim technique is really, really important. We talk about that a bunch in the plane. And so then the other things with the cruise checklist would be lights. So if it was across country, we would turn off our landing and taxi lights, but honestly, in the practice area, I like to keep them on because it makes us more visible to other planes. And then leaning. And so we don't get too far away here. The town of Festus is right in front of us in the practice area, so if we zoom out, we'll probably actually be able to see a flashing beacon light. You can actually see it right there. Right where the mouse is, it shows green and white, and that's because the simulator has beacon lights for airports on all the time. You can see it right there as well. And so there's an airport right there, the Festus Airport. You know, just so we're aware. So the town of Festus is down here, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to turn us around, and the autopilot is, you know, the autopilot's in control. So I'll just have the autopilot turn us. We'll just turn around 180 degrees for now, and it'll maintain this altitude as it's turning. And so what we want to do now is we want to lean the engine. And so on the checklist that we have, it says lean above 3,000 feet. Lean as needed above 3,000 feet. And so we're at 4,000 feet, so we are going to lean. And in the simulator, again, it's kind of one of those things that I'll do my best to demonstrate it, but what Cessna recommends is that we lean our engine 60 to 60 degrees rich of peak EGT. And so EGT is exhaust gas temperature, and on the 6-pack display, it's indicated on this instrument, EGT. And so what we want to do is we want to lean our mixture until this needle gets as high as it's going to go, excuse me, and then pull it out. 50 degrees. So you can see down here that it's 25-degree Fahrenheit division, so each one of those lines is 25 degrees apart. And so we want to go until this needle gets to its maximum value, and then go 2 lines back from that in the rich direction. So we pull out the mixture, and then until it gets to its maximum, and then we push it back in 50 degrees rich of that. And so we can use our EGT bug to show where the maximum is. And so I'm just going to put it on where it is right now. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to start leaning out our mixture. And so we just pull it out little by little. And as we're doing this, I'm fine using the autopilot for this, but we'll kind of keep it, we'll keep an eye on where we are. There's Valmeyer Lake. We got Festus behind us, but we're still flying the plane, really. So we just bring out the mixture little by little, and we're going to watch the EGT gauge. And we're going to see that it's probably going to increase a little bit. I don't always trust the simulator with this stuff, but as you bring it out, it takes it a second, but you can see that the needle is definitely moving, so we'll move our bug a little bit as well. So we bring it out even more, and we'll be able to watch our fuel flow is going to decrease as well as we're using less fuel by leaning the mixture, so it's still going up. Whoops. Still going up. And we'll just keep increasing. Oh, looks like it went down. Let's see if I pull it back anymore, if it goes down anymore. Yes, it is. So the maximum it got was somewhere about like right here. And so this line right above this big one, so right where that red thing is, we're going to go 2 lines below that. So we want to be at this line here, so 50 degrees rich. So we'll go down 25 and 50. Whoops. And so we'll push that mixture in a little bit more until it goes down there. And so again, the simulator, not the most realistic with that, but that's where we would go, in the actual plane. So it's still going rich. It's gonna make me almost go full rich, isn't it? Yeah. Well, it is what it is. It's a simulator. The real plane, it behaves much more nicely. So. But cool, so there's Valmeyer Lake. The other couple things I wanted to show while we were out here would be Waterloo. And so Waterloo is another area that we go a lot in the practice area. And so the Waterloo is going to be this town just off of our right here. And so Waterloo, I'll turn us towards it. So like a lot of times on the traffic frequency, we would, we would say, well, we're going to go towards Valmeyer Lake. And if there was somebody maybe over Valmeyer Lake, they would say it on the on Parks traffic, and then, well, maybe instead of going where they are, we'll go somewhere else. So maybe we would go to Waterloo, or maybe we would talk to them and say, well, we're going to stay north of it if they were south, or they would offer to stay south. It just kind of depends, and you just have to talk to people sometimes to figure out what's going on. But Waterloo's another great place to go. There are definitely decent landing spots over here. You can see all the fields that are around the area. Not quite as many as around this area, but they are there. And so this here is Waterloo. And usually, for me, I do my maneuvers predominantly over Valmeyer Lake, but if it has to be Waterloo, then that's what it has to be. But so Waterloo's here, and again, we're clear of the Bravo airspace in this area, and we can see that based on our map that's on here. I know all of our planes don't have this particular avionics. Well, none of them actually do, but all of our planes have some way of being able to tell where you are and where the airspace is. Especially if you have a VFR chart, you can know for sure, hey, this altitude of the Bravo airspace within this area would be 4,500 feet. So you're good to fly under that at 4,000 feet. You just cannot go 4,500. But so yeah, so Waterloo over here, we're out of the Bravo shelf, so this is perfect. And then if we wanted to go back to our airport, and so we'll kind of head back to our airport, and then this will just kind of be the end of this practice area tour. So on clear days, well, I'll go back to the pilot side, and we'll stay in here so it's easier to hear. On a nice clear day, you can see downtown St. Louis still, and it's really obvious in the simulator. But you can see downtown St. Louis right out there, and again, the simulator has the beacons very, very obvious for the airports, and so our airport's going to be over here, and you can see it from out here usually, but it's not quite that easy as having that beacon light, but you can definitely usually tell where the airport is. But if you didn't know, pretty much kind of like what we said earlier, was if you got lost and you needed to get back to the airport, there's a couple other landmarks that you could use. So I'm going to disconnect the autopilot now, and I'll turn us in towards the airport. So I'll turn us north. And so again, this is the south practice area. And so real quick, I'm going to make another call on Park's traffic frequency. And we're currently over Waterloo, 4,000 feet. We're headed back to the airport. And so what I would say on the frequency is exactly that. So I would say, Park's traffic, Cessna Oscar Mike Golf is currently over Waterloo, 4,000 feet. We will be headed back towards the St. Louis Downtown Airport, descending down to 2,000 feet. Last call, Parks. And then you say last call in there. Pretty much you just say what you're doing. So we'll be descending down to down to 2,000 feet as we head back towards the airport. And so we'll just reduce our power a little bit, and we'll start our way down. And so now we would do the descent checklist, which would have items like make sure the mixture will be enriched. It wouldn't have to go full rich yet, but just a little bit because we're descending. Have the lights on, flaps if you needed it. You get your ATIS for the airport, which for us would be 121.45. And then you just, you do what you need to do. You'd follow that checklist. And so for us, again, if you fly straight towards downtown St. Louis, you will get the airport. But, we'd have to make our calls towards the airport as well. But you can pretty much see over here. I'm just going to get out. Well, I'll stay in the plane so it's easier to hear. You can see Columbia, which is going to be right here. You can see the JB Bridge, which is over there. You can see the Mississippi River going north to south, and that'll lead you back to downtown. So at any point, you can head back towards downtown, following the river, and then our airport's just going to be just off of the right here. So just east of the river. And then there's some other towns over here. Millstadt is going to be, whoops, it should be this town right here will be Millstadt, which, and there, there's a bunch of other things in the practice area as well. I don't have time to go through all of them, but I hope this video has been helpful. And yeah, usually, like I said, on the way back, we'll go in at 2,000 feet, and that's kind of where I'm descending to now, to the airport. So yeah, in the real world now, we would get our ATIS, and we would start to talk to tower when we're within 10 miles. So anyway, I hope this video has been helpful, and can, be useful for you as you're gearing up to solo down in the South Practice area. So, hope to talk to you soon.